Introducing parents to the IEP Team process with Dr. Rob Keiter, SERC Program Coordinator, March 27, 2024. SERC's Wisdom Wednesday webinar series.
All right, welcome everyone again. My name is Rob Keiter. I am the Program Coordinator at the Special Education Resolution Center. Really glad to be with you today. Also, Allison Conch, our Program Manager, is with us as a panelist, and she will be helping to field any questions that you have during the presentation. And she may have also some comments and thoughts that she wants to share through this presentation today. The topic today is introducing parents to the IEP Team process and best practices, really some suggestions I want to share with you today for your consideration. My presentation today, just in terms of an introduction and background, is really informed by my experience as a mediator. I'm not an educator, I'm not a parent of children with disabilities, but I have been privileged over the last 10 years to work with a lot of school districts and families, helping them resolve disputes at the earliest stage possible, which is our mission. And I've been doing that along with our panel. Right now we have 8 mediators, facilitators. I've been doing that, and we do that in providing IEP facilitation and mediations. And so my observations that I'll be sharing with you and some of my conclusions and thoughts really come from looking at the interactions of schools and parents through a mediator, facilitator lens. Over the past few years, I've spoken with a few special ed directors who are meeting with parents that are new to the IEP Team process. They're meeting with them prior to the first IEP meeting to get to know the parents and to orient them to the process, kind of like a welcome to the team onboarding approach. I really believe that this is a great idea, and I've been thinking about, since hearing that, I've been thinking about how this could be a wonderful opportunity for developing shared expectations regarding the process and the journey ahead. As a facilitator, when I'm conducting a meeting, whether it's facilitating an IEP meeting or whether it's mediation, I always think about and how the way the meeting starts I believe it can have a profound impact in how the meeting unfolds. And I think, and so basically, considering that, I take some time to set the tone for collaboration at the beginning of the meeting. In a larger way, I think that this can also be true in terms of getting off to a good start regarding the relationships between schools and parents, when having a time to be able to orient them and help them develop shared expectations about the process. So that's where I'm coming from today. I hope that this presentation helps you in your collaborative mission and journey. Now, I'm going to start off today by looking at a really big picture idea for you to think about, and then share a little more context about expectations, how they relate to trust, just to set up this theme of shared expectations. And then finally, I'm going to actually share with you what I think would be some helpful topics to include if you are meeting with parents prior to their first IEP meeting, to really address some important areas regarding expectations. So that's where we're going today.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
The attendees, I don't think, can access the documents in the chat. Can you repost them there? Whenever I try to do it, it will only go to the hosts and the panelists.
Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on one second and let me get to the chat. Okay. If I sent that to just the panelists, that was not right. So let me do this again. And we definitely want to make sure everybody can get these. All right, the first one's going in. And the second one's going in. Let me know if those are available.
I can see them. It looks like, okay, good, perfect. They can get them.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know that. All right, so the first thing I want us to look at, I'm sharing this model with you that I've seen a number of times over the years in different contexts. I use this in the facilitation training that I provide with SERC, but it basically, it talks about, describes three aspects or dimensions of participant satisfaction in meetings. Now, it can be, we can think about it in terms of an IEP meeting today, but really it would be true regarding any meeting. When people come out of a meeting and they're trying to assess whether they feel satisfied regarding what took place in that meeting, it's not just a one or nothing thing. There are three different dimensions, and they all relate to each other. So let's just look at these briefly, because I think it could set up some context for you. The dimensions are, there's a substantive dimension, a procedural dimension, and then the relationship dimension. And as I mentioned, each one of these will impact the other. The first one is the substantive dimension. And basically, this question that I have underneath is really what it's all about. Did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Whatever kind of meeting it is, but let's think about an IEP meeting. If it was the initial IEP meeting, did we get the IEP finished? Were we able to do everything that needed to be done in the IEP? If it's a renewal IEP, were we able to make the changes that needed to be made, the updates to the IEP? If the IEP was to address parents' concerns, were the parents' concerns addressed effectively? So the way you answer that will determine what level of satisfaction there is. And I think this will make sense to you. If we accomplished what we set out to accomplish in the meeting, then we're going to be satisfied. If we feel like we have something to show for our work, we're going to have a sense of positive accomplishment. However, we're not necessarily going to be satisfied if we have nothing to show for our time and the energy invested. And that's the kind of meeting where you leave and you say, well, that was a waste, or maybe even something worse. So we want to have satisfaction in the substantive level of getting the mission accomplished for that meeting. The second area is procedural. So if the first area is, did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? The second dimension is really about, how did we accomplish what we accomplished in the meeting? Basically, did the process that we used, by which we met, hopefully, we met our substantive objectives, did that process, and I think this is huge right here, did the process that we utilized meet our shared expectations? Now, that first of all assumes that we have shared expectations, which is why I'm going to talk a lot more about that. But this is really important. This is where, on the school side, compliance requirements, or procedural requirements, are going to come in. But the bottom line is, we all have expectations. Did we operate in, as some people have said, did we operate in integrity regarding our shared expectations? If so, we're going to have satisfaction in that procedural dimension. And then the last dimension, which relates directly to the other two, is the relationship of the parties. And the question there is, what is the quality of our relationship with other participants after having worked together? This is a big one. Are these people that we would work with in the future? And of course, it might be that we'll be working together for a long time. Are these people with whom we've established trust and with whom we really feel like we've engaged in shared learning in our collaborative experience in an IEP meeting? Has working with these people changed us in a positive way? Has it improved and built trust? Or has working with the people that we've worked with resulted in broken trust, loss of social capital, or damaged relationships? And so you can see how all three, and whether we got the job done, that's going to make a difference in this. The procedural dimension, the way we got the job done, will definitely impact this. And we're concerned not just about getting the job done, but the way we get the job done and the people that we're working with. So you could think of that first dimension, substantive dimension, is about the product. The procedural dimension is really about the process, okay? And then finally, the relationship dimension is about the partnership. And we want the partnership to be strong. So I just share that with you up front because I think it impacts the way that I'm looking at these things. And by the way, I've never done, well, I can tell you that that third area, the relationship area that we're looking at right now, and that question, what is the quality of our relationship with the participants after having this meeting together? That is very similar to a question that at SERC, if we are facilitating an IEP meeting, we're going to be asking the school afterwards in our evaluation, the parents, and we ask the facilitators to answer, do you think that using this IEP facilitated meeting has helped to strengthen the relationship between the school and parents, or has it just maintained it, or has it damaged it? We want to know, how this has worked. I'm just wondering and sharing these with you to give you context, but also wondering if this might be helpful to you as a school when you look back on IEP meetings to really address the effectiveness from the school side of the meetings. Like we do on that third question, you might want to look back and ask, what kind of level do we have on the substantive side, on the procedural side, and the relationship side? Just something to share with you that maybe you could utilize in another way.
Rob?
Yeah.
I think I really like thinking through this, these three factors, because you're right. When you're thinking about the school side of things, it tends to be, and I'm just speaking from experience of having been at a school district and even just what we hear on, the calls we get a lot here, is that sometimes I think because of the nature of compliance and all of that, right, that schools get really focused on the other two, the substantive. Did we today we're here to finish this IEP, like this is our goal, this is what we have to accomplish, right? And the procedural of like making sure you tick all the boxes and did you do it in the right way and all of that, when realistically a lot of the issues that we come across have more to do with the relationship and how that meeting went in terms of relationship. Did communication go well? And in terms of historically the relationship, a lot of it is based around breakdown in communication and the relationship between the parties and people feeling heard. But it's not always the focus of the school district because you're focused on, we've got to get this done, it's due today, or whatever the case may be. So I really like thinking about, these are three distinct aspects, but they all relate to one another and they're all very important.
Yeah.
And they're okay.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I totally agree. And one thing I'd mention is on this procedural one again. What you said is true, that schools, they have all of those requirements. And so oftentimes they're really focused on that. But remember, the procedural satisfaction piece is not just about those compliance things. It's also about people have expectations of what's going to happen in an IEP meeting and what the process really is. And if those expectations aren't met, not just the compliance things, the school's really focused on that, but everybody's got expectations. And if those expectations aren't realized, there's going to be a deficit in this procedural. And yes, what you're saying is absolutely true. It totally moves over then into the relationship. So yeah, those are really helpful comments. Let's see, let me jump ahead a few slides ahead. Okay, so with that as an initial framework, a little bit more about context now, understanding the why regarding the things I'm going to share in a few minutes. And really this is about the relationship between trust and expectations regarding the process. So just a few things that I've mentioned here, and then I've got some notes that are outside of the slides. First of all, and these will make sense to everyone, but one common denominator in any good relationship is trust, right? Very important factor in any relationship, including schools and parents. Trust isn't automatic. It has to be built, right? And it takes time to build it. Now, the third point I think is really important. There's no better time to start building trust than right now. And one of the points that I would love to make here is that I think obviously we want to start building trust when we actually have the meeting, but trust building, just like communication, really starts before the meeting. And it takes place during the meeting and after the meeting. So that's, once again, why I think it can be so helpful if we take some time to do that before we ever have that first meeting. The foundation of trust is mutual respect. And mutual respect is just basically, you believe that I care about you and vice versa. The same thing with me, that we humanize rather than demonize each other. So that mutual respect is so important. One of the best ways, and Allison already mentioned this, but one of the best ways that we show that we do care about someone, that we communicate mutual respect, is through our willingness to listen to them. And I'm going to throw in just a few points about this that aren't in the presentation, but I will share these often because I just think I see these so many times in meetings. But when it comes to listening, we're not talking about listening to come up with an answer. That's human nature. We do that. We listen to build our case. We listen to come up with an answer. I'm really talking about listening for understanding, to build understanding, not necessarily agreement. That's, I think, where we get thrown off track by worrying too much right away about agreement, but just listening for understanding, to understand what the person's saying, and maybe even more importantly, where they're coming from. Now, a few things about listening that are really important. The way we view one another really impacts our ability to listen to each other. For instance, if I view you as an adversary, when I'm listening to you, I'm going to be listening with some distrust in my mind and maybe some suspicion, and I'm going to be picking up all of the negative things that could move us apart. If I'm listening and viewing you as an ally, we're on the same team. I'm listening in a different way. It's much easier for me to hear and find common ground when I view you as an ally. I hear the good stuff. I hear things that, even though they may not be proposals, I can see there's a genesis there for something that may really be a proposal that might result in a solution that would really work in this situation. And part of that is because I'm viewing you as an ally. There's something that I've shared before that I keep coming back to, but it's called reactive devaluation. And it's where we react when listening to someone in a way to devalue what they're saying. So it's called reactive devaluation. And basically what it is, let's say that you're sharing something with me. Let's say, Allison, I'll use you as an example here. You're sharing something with me, and the thing that you're sharing with me is the very thing I need to hear, and actually the thing that I agree with, that I could get on board with, but I can't hear it because you're saying it. And I distrust you and I dislike you, and therefore, boom, I instantly devalue it. It's out of the way. That's reactive devaluation, and I've shared with teams before during an IEP meeting or in mediation, sometimes together, sometimes when I'm meeting with them separately, really tried to encourage them to intentionally view one another as allies. See each other as allies on the same team instead of adversaries on different sides, because the way you view one another will absolutely filter right into what you hear. So Again, one of the best ways we can show that we care and communicate mutual respect is willingness to listen. And listening is really, the other thing about listening that way is that when we listen to each other as allies, it really creates an environment where solutions much more readily present themselves. It just changes the environment in the room. Okay, I could go on and on about that, and I won't. Trust is the result of having agreed upon expectations, shared expectations that are implemented consistently over time. Now, there are other things that build trust as well, but this is something that's very real. First of all, it means we need to have shared expectations. And many times we don't start off with those. So we have to build those. But it involves having those agreed upon shared expectations and then implementing them consistently. Like implementing what's in the IEP, implementing the because what does the IEP give us? It really gives us expectations, what we can expect of ourselves and what we can expect of others regarding the student's education. So when we have those shared expectations and we implement them consistently, and we do this over time, trust is built. So that's why I'm going to be spending the rest of this time talking about some specific expectations that I think could be developed as we introduce parents to the IEP team process. The last thing I mentioned here is that trust takes a lot of time to build, but it can be torn down in a minute. I mean, really, it can be torn down in a second. So the trust is something we always need to be thinking about when we're thinking about that satisfaction, those 3 dimensions of satisfaction, and thinking about having shared expectations, implementing them consistently, and doing this over time. So again, just more context for where we're going. All right. What I'm going to share now are 7 topics that I think might be helpful to share with parents that are new to the IEP team process. Maybe they're new to special education, period. Their child has been found eligible, having a specific category, or maybe it's even developmental delay. It's not a specific category yet, but they're eligible for special education. An IEP team is going to be formed, and they're starting at the very beginning. Or maybe it's a parent that has moved to a new district, and they're familiar with special education and with IEP meetings, but they're coming in. They're a new parent to the district. So what are some things that we could share with them? And I just have 7. You may have some others. Allison, you might think of something that needs to be added to this list. But here's the first one. Excuse me, I'm dealing with allergies today. Address who makes up the IEP team and how often does the team meet. So just simply letting them know the core team, the required team members, there's going to be an administrator, it might be a principal, assistant principal, it might be a special education director. There's going to be a special education teacher. There's going to be a general ed teacher. Those are required. There may be anyone else from the school team that would have helpful input to give. Might be a school counselor, might be another resource provider, other teachers. And then, of course, the last required person is the parents. And the parent can bring with them whoever they want to. They may want to bring their mom or dad or their sister. They may have an advocate that they'd like to bring. But those are the required. That's what the IEP team is going to be made of. Parents that are brand new may have no idea. Letting them know that, that's why when you come to your first meeting, there may be anywhere from, because the school will already have an idea of who they'll be bringing. They know the required ones, but they may know of some other educational professionals that'll be there, and they might want to let the parent know. So there might be 7 to 10 people in our meeting, just letting them know who's on this team. And then how often does the team meet? Letting them know that they're going to meet once a year. to renew the IEP. They also can meet at different times to review testing, to consider changes that might need to be made, and that the parent can request an IEP meeting, possibly to talk about parent concerns. But letting them know who's on the team and how often typically the team meets. That would be the first thing.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
I want to say I've heard from parents, but in both roles, like in my old district and in this role, that is huge, understanding the who. Because parents that walk into meetings where, yeah, there's 10 people there and they don't understand why, even if they're told, well, we have to have these required people. Well, who are the extra people and what is their purpose? And I think, schools get used to introducing, when they do introductions, who they are and like what they do. Like, hi, I'm Allison, I'm the speech path, or hi, I'm so-and-so and I'm the principal or whatever. But if there are additional people there, not only introducing their role, but also how it relates to the student, because sometimes maybe two principals are there. Well, why? One's the site principal and one's the grade level principal, and there's some behavioral issues going on or whatever the case may be. But I think having them understand why each person is there and their purpose is huge, because parents get intimidated. I mean, they walk in and they have no clue who most of the people are sometimes walking into this meeting, and it feels scary for them. I mean, that's what I've heard from feedback from parents, is that they're scared. So then they're operating out of fear. So I think that's a huge one, is who's on the team and why are they there?
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. There's already some anxiety, right? But remember, sometimes the anxiety is just because of all the unknowns. So that's why it's so important to develop these shared expectations up front, because that actually can alleviate some anxiety. Now, you just made me realize I forgot to share a little bit more about expectations before we dive into these. So let me just mention a few things. First of all, and you really hit the first one, don't assume that all IEP team members have the same expectations regarding the process. School team personnel and parents may have very different expectations. And really, it makes sense because it very much relates to their different roles and responsibilities. So think about this. School team members are the experts when it comes to education in different areas, different aspects of education. Often, typically, they've participated in many IEP meetings, and they're familiar with the process. This is their profession, and they're mindful of IDEA compliance requirements and the procedural I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed. They are also thinking about, and those of you educators that are here, you're thinking about school policies, resources, and the responsibility of educating all students, even though you're focusing on an individual, developing an individualized education program. Their role and responsibility requires that they have in mind all students that are being educated. And this really becomes more present when behavior issues are really involved and when they're escalated. And they know the acronyms: LRE, IEE, FBA, BIP. I need to come up with a rap or something, but they know the common language, right? They have this. Bottom line is they discuss these matters on the job daily. So they have these kinds of expectations. Parents, on the other hand, are the experts when it comes to their child, and their expertise is really, really needed on the team. They are the main advocates for their child, and they may be, and understandably so, they may be anxious, afraid, sad, even terrified as they start their special education journey. So many unknowns and things that they're dealing with. And then one of our mediators on our panel, Missy Downer, shared this metaphor with me that I love. And she talked about how the parent has this precious, priceless jewel, and the jewel is their child. And they are bringing this precious jewel, their child, to the school, dropping off this jewel, this child with the school, and entrusting the school with the child's education and their safety. And so, I mean, that really impacts the way they look at all of these things. They don't work in the IEP world every day. They don't know the language. Everything is new to them. Some parents have advocates and some parents don't have advocates. They know all students need to be educated, but they are clearly focused on their child. So a very different mindsets based on the roles and responsibilities that schools and parents have, but need to be understood and factored in when we think about onboarding new parents to the IEP team process. So I'm just basically saying it's safe to assume that the parties, the participants on an IEP team, don't start off with the same expectations when it comes to the process and what their participation means on the team. One more thing I just would mention before we go back to the actual topics is that just to realize that expectations don't have to be spoken to be alive and well. Think about this. Unfulfilled expectations, whether you've shared that with anyone, they, whether spoken or unspoken, often lead to frustration, anger, discouragement, disillusionment, and conflict. When I go to get my meds at Walmart and I don't have to have said anything to anyone, but if I go there and I'm expecting I'm going to get in that line and get those meds in 10 minutes and I'm there for 25 minutes, there's some problem in my mind. I'm getting frustrated, and maybe then I am saying something. But the point is, you don't have to say or speak your expectations to have them. That's why I think it's so important to develop shared expectations regarding the process at the earliest stage, because people have them, whether they're sharing them. Just like in any organization, there are written rules. We might call it our policy manual, but everybody knows there are unspoken rules. And there are spoken expectations, there are unspoken expectations. But what expectations we have make a big difference on our satisfaction level and our relationship. So first one, address who makes up the team and how often does the team meet. Let's look at the second one. Address what happens during an IEP meeting and what is the typical length of the meeting. So this is where I think maybe it could be helpful to have a sample kind of redacted agenda of a typical, maybe full IEP meeting that would have, you know, in it the baseline information, the goals, the placement, services and supports, accommodations, modifications, ESY. And Allison, you might fill in some things, but just those basic components that would be that a parent has no idea about. Because what I see happening sometimes is the parent shows up to the meeting, they get this huge IEP, and they really may not know what's going on. But if in the very beginning they could have just a basic, brief understanding, these are the things that we typically cover. Now, meetings that aren't annual meetings maybe only might address one or two of these things. It might address accommodations, or it might address a question about placement, or it might be to address the parents' concerns. But just letting them know what typically happens to remove some of that anxiety and give them more realistic expectations could be really helpful. Also, what's the typical length of the meeting? Now, there's no right answer to this, but I do think it's helpful when there is a shared understanding of the time frame. Everybody gets the start time clear, but we don't also always talk about the time frame. And the reason I'm saying that's so important is that, let's say that the teachers that really have to be in that meeting, some of the key people that really can't leave, they've got a meeting coming up in 2 hours. And so they're thinking, maybe they haven't said anything possibly, but in their mind, they're thinking this meeting needs to take place and needs to be finished in 1 hour and 40 minutes or whatever amount of time. Parents, on the other hand, may in their thinking be thinking, I'm going to be here all day if it takes to get this done. Well, you've got two varied, I mean, really varied expectations there. And somebody's going to be upset. So I think that when I just let you know, when I'm facilitating a meeting from SERC, coming in and asked by the parents in school to facilitate an IEP meeting, I'll always ask ahead of time, is there an agreed upon time? Is there a time frame here? I know the meeting's starting at 1 p.m. How long are you thinking the meeting's going to go? And sometimes the school will let me know, well, we have two hours for this meeting, or we have 3 hours for this meeting, or we only have an hour for this meeting. That's really helpful to me as a facilitator. What I try to do then, with the goal of developing shared expectations when I set the tone, is I'll say to the team, my understanding is that we have 2 hours together today in this meeting. That kind of, then the parties can have some clear expectations. So I don't know what the length should be. I'm not saying there is a specific right length, but I think possibly addressing what the typical length is when you're meeting up front to help them be introduced, and then maybe even for meetings that go on from there, letting the parties know. I don't know, Allison, whether you see that or what your thoughts would be on the second thing, but just giving them a basic idea of what's going to happen when we show up, so we're not totally in the dark about what's going on here.
Oh, no, I think that's perfect. The time thing is great. I know a lot of, sometimes schools worry about, can I give an end time? Well, yeah, you can. I mean, let the parent know. I mean, you can put it on the invitation to meeting to let them know that the school team members only have until this certain time, which might mean you have to have a follow-up, a part 2 meeting, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I think the more you can front load to the parent, because like you said, Rob, this is the day-to-day of the school. Like, this is the world that the special ed people live in every day. And so making that or keeping that at the forefront of your mind as a school person is huge. I mean, it's sort of like if you're not a medical professional, when you go to the doctor or you're in the hospital for something and they're not explaining things to you in layman's terms, well, then you're probably going to get frustrated or anxious when you don't understand. But when you're the person living that life day to day, you tend to forget and or just not think about. These parents don't have this knowledge. Most parents do not. And I know that we can say things like, well, they have their parent rights and they can read this and they can read that. They can, but that doesn't mean that they still get everything and fully understand what it really looks like day to day. So I think it's great. I think the more you can front load, the better. Like you said, if we can set the tone at the beginning before problems arise, the easier things will be for parents and schools. That's the intention. Not that it's going to be 100% of the time, right? Because there are just difficult cases and situations, but it can certainly help prevent problems.
Yeah, it can prevent unneeded conflict. I mean, if you're setting the tone at the beginning of the journey, it can alleviate a lot of unneeded conflict. You're going to have things that are going to happen. It's a journey, right? But the more you can do this on the front end, I think it prepares you for better for the journey. The other thing about time, so I appreciate your comments. The other thing about the time is that when I'm facilitating a meeting, if I know there is a time frame like that 2 hours, not only do I share that up front, but then I'm really keeping my eye on the clock as we go through that meeting. For instance, if I know that there's some things that need to be looked at regarding some possible changes that are going to be addressed in this IEP meeting, but one of the main reasons we're meeting is to address the parents' concerns. And if I see we've got 2 hours long, I mean, I'm not directing the meeting the way it needs to go. I'm there to assist the parties in having the best, as needed, and having the best conversation possible. But if I see that we're an hour and 40 minutes into this 2 hours, hour and a half into these 2 hours, and we haven't got to those parent concerns, then I'm going to possibly intervene and say, okay, just want to mention, just remind everyone where we are on our time right now. We have a half hour left, 40 minutes left, and we definitely want to give time to address the parents' concerns. So I think having a time frame can actually help you be how do I say it, more effective in your use of the time. Okay, so, but that's it on that one. Let's look at the next one. Real important. Address the role the parent has on the team. Now, this is a really great opportunity for the school to make the parent feel welcome and valued before you ever step into a meeting, letting them know you are one of the required participants in this IEP team. And the reason for that is we recognize you are the expert when it comes to your child. The things that you have to share, your input, your feedback, your proposals are so important to us. And we want you to know before we ever have a meeting, you will be heard. We will seriously consider what you share during the meeting, because our goal is to work together as a team, hopefully reach consensus, and our desire would be to be able to make decisions that everyone would feel good about. But even if we can't do that, we want you to know this: you have a really important role. We want to hear from you. We're going to be listening to you, and we will seriously consider whatever you share in terms of your place on the IEP team. I think just it would not take you very long to help the parent just realize a sense of their importance there, and let them know up front that they will be heard, that you're going to be listened, and their ideas will be seriously considered. Because here's a reality. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody needs to feel like they've been heard. There may be some folks on the IEP team that may not have as much to share in a specific meeting as others, but the parent, I mean, everyone needs to feel like they've been heard. The parent, I think we really need to go out of our way to make sure the parent feels heard. The requirement under IDEA, I believe, is called meaningful participation. And meaningful participation is not just being given a seat at the table. I believe it's really being heard and your ideas and thoughts being considered. So that's the third thing that I would hit right up front.
Rob,
yeah.
I love that. And I want to address just one thing that has come up recently, and I think it was a situation in which you were involved. You know, meaningful participation, that's perfectly correct. Meaningful parental participation. They have, their ideas have to be considered. That does not mean the school has to agree with the parents' ideas, because it's the school's obligation to provide FAPE. And so if the parents' thoughts and ideas for their child's education are unreasonable or not FAPE for that child, the school is obligated to hear that parent. But that does not mean the school has to agree with them, because it might not be appropriate or reasonable for the child. Rob, I think you know which situation I'm talking about. So sometimes this comes up where parents will say, I'm not being afforded parental participation. Well, if they're being heard and truly the school is considering them and their ideas, then they are. And it is important for them to be heard. And that does not mean that you have to agree and give in to whatever the parent wants if it's not appropriate for the child.
So Allison, you and I are a great team. And the reason we are a great team is, let's look at the next topic.
Oh, love it. Okay.
I appreciate you sharing that, because that's a great illustration. Listen, think about this, everyone. I believe this is so important for parents after they know, when they know that they are valued and that their input is really requested by the team. We need it. We will hear it. We will seriously consider it. They also need to know our goal is to work together to come up with, find solutions, make decisions that everyone can agree with. That's wonderful. That's what we shoot for. However, they need to know what happens if the team makes a decision that I don't agree with as a parent. And you hit it, Allison. The reason for that is, and you could actually, I believe, share this in a very positive way when you're meeting up front with them, to let them know the reason is, it ultimately is the school's responsibility to provide FAPE. It's not the parent's responsibility. It's the school's responsibility. And the school has to make decisions that they believe truly does provide FAPE and stays within the guidelines and is most appropriate. Again, what is the goal under Andrew? I believe it really is to develop an IEP that is reasonably calculated at the time of its writing to provide some educational benefit to the student in light of his or her individual circumstances, how their disabilities impact their education. So the bottom line is the school is responsible for doing that. As a result of that, after the team considers everything the parent says and they try to work with that, it may be that they have to go a different direction. So letting the parents know this is a possibility. And I would go one step further. If this happens, here's what's going to take place. Your disagreement will be reflected in the written notice. It'll be written in the IEP. It'll be in the written notice, at least, that the parent disagrees with this. Also, you have the right to request later on that the team meet again to consider something. You could do that. What are your procedural safeguards? I mean, the parent needs to understand that they could request a facilitated IEP meeting to address some of these things later on. If it's a clear dispute, they could request mediation. They also, if they believe the school is not providing FAPE, if they believe that they are not following the correct procedures, they can file a state complaint. And if they file a state complaint, then the State Department initiates an investigation and makes a determination. And that might involve requiring mediation, but that will be the State Department's decision. That parent can do that. If they really believe it's not just not what I wanted, but this is not FAPE, they can file a state complaint, or they could file due process. And that's a major legal process, but it's a process that would take that issue then and turn that over into the hands of a hearing officer, for a hearing officer to decide on whether FAPE is being provided or being denied and what the remedy would be. So I think just having a basic idea, first of all, knowing we want your input, we're going to seriously consider, we're going to work to try to reach solutions that we find the greatest consensus in, but at the same time, so that we have these shared expectation, because what Allison brought up is very real. And I've had that happen a number of times where there's really a sense that I wasn't listened to. And it really wasn't, I wasn't listened to, or my ideas weren't seriously considered. It was the team didn't agree with me. And so there needs to be this clarity that, that might be the end result in some cases. But it's going to be in the written notice, and you have options. And what do you think about that, Allison? Just letting them know, again, not just giving them the speech at the end, but about procedural safeguards, but letting them know, there are some other things you could do.
Yeah, I think it's smart. I mean, I know it can feel weird because, as a school district person thinking about, preemptively telling parents about, if you're unhappy with this, here are your dispute resolution options, might feel like, oh, I'm sort of like nudging the parent to do this. You're not. I mean, the less confused parent and the better informed parent, the better things will go. That doesn't mean, again, that this will never happen, that, a parent might not file something. But a lot of times it comes from them operating out of fear and confusion, and then they get angry. But so the better informed they can be, the more likely it will be smooth.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that really is back to expectations again, right? So we want to clear away any confusion that we possibly. The other thing that I see coming up sometimes, I don't address it in this training, but I'll mention it now because it's another expectation, is sometimes, the parents, and it could be the school also, but I've seen this more often with parents where they might feel like, for instance, if SERC is being called in to facilitate an IEP meeting, they may feel like we're an advocate for the parent. Mm-hmm. And that is a really kind of dangerous expectation, because it can result in some real disappointment and frustration, because the truth is, I'm not an advocate for the parent, nor am I an advocate for the school. I'm an advocate for the process of helping them work together to make these decisions. So clearing away any confusion we can, alleviating any anxiety we can because of the unknowns, that's really the goal here. You're not encouraging people to file state complaints or encouraging them to file due process, but just letting them know what's there. Okay.
And I think giving them our contact information, school districts and parents should reach out to us if you're approaching an issue where you feel like you need some, alternate dispute resolution options. I think sometimes, like I said earlier, parents do end up getting angry and they'll file something, and we'll have parents file due process and then they get into it and they didn't realize what all entailed. And it's like part of our job at SERC is to fully inform both parties, schools and parents. So giving them our contact information, if they are in disagreement or they're questioning what's happening, refer them to us, because we will sit through and talk them through, potentially, well, here's why the school is obligated to do this, or well, here are your options. And a lower level dispute resolution option is typically better than a very heavy legal filing. But at least the parents would walk into whatever it is they choose to do being fully informed of what each process looks like. So I think just giving them our contact information is also helpful, because we can kind of talk through some things with the parents as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I didn't put it's not in this material, but it's almost like we could show a continuum. And I kind of mentioned it, but it was just starting from the least to the greatest kind of intervention. It might be just having another IEP meeting. It might be reaching out to SERC to have a facilitated IEP meeting. Let us help them with that. It might be letting us help them with mediation. And those can all come before there's a state complaint or due process being filed. And again, our mission is helping families and schools resolve disputes at the earliest stage possible. And we feel like it's better for everyone. It's better for the parent, it's better for the school, and most importantly, it's better for the student. So yeah, really good points there. Okay, just a couple more. I think also it's a great opportunity to develop an initial game plan for communication between the schools and parents. This is something I've seen come up over the years in so many different IEP meetings. Maybe where the team's been meeting for a long time, but it certainly would be true with a new parent, a parent that's new to the IEP team process. What kind of communication is there going to be between the parents and the school? And that would be a good time to, at least it might be changed later on, but an initial communication plan. And basically what I have there is who, what, when, and how. Who will the school contact person be? And if you're a school, a district, and you're thinking about this point, think carefully about who would be the best person to be a contact with the parent. And then also, what are the kinds of things that you'll be communicating about? How often should they be expecting communication to happen? There's no right answer to that. Some teams develop like a weekly communication, or it might be as needed. Sometimes it's daily. But what kind of should we be expecting regarding, or just when there's a real need that needs to be addressed? And then finally, how? What's the best means of communicating? And I would ask the parent, what's best for you? Some parents prefer email. Some parents prefer text. Some prefer a phone call. But find a way that works for the parent and for the school, but clearly identifies who will be contacted, what the expectations are as far as what we're contacting about. It's not a minute by minute monitoring, right? But what are the things we're going to be talking about that would require our communicating? How often should we expect it? And what's the best means for doing that? I think that could really help you, because there are many IEP meetings I've been in and mediations where, even though communication wasn't an issue that had been brought to me as a facilitator in advance, or an issue that was described in mediation, many times in that facilitating that meeting, it became obvious there needs to be a better communication plan between the school and the parents. So think about that in advance. And then the last one that I really have, actually there's two. Consider sharing the IEP communication guidelines if you are using them during your meetings. We've developed these 5 short, we call them communication guidelines. In other contexts, they might be called ground rules. I like the word communication guidelines better because they just really reflect the norms that were the expected behavior and the way that we're going to interact during a meeting. If I'm facilitating an IEP meeting, I will send these to the school and the parents prior to the meeting. But in any meeting, I will go over these communication guidelines when I'm setting the tone at the very beginning. So I think what I need to do right now is stop sharing this and let me share those communication guidelines. Some of you may be familiar with these already. Let's see. Are these up on the screen now? Okay, so there are 5 of the guidelines. I share them in a little different order, but again, what's happened is we've been sharing these in IEP meetings when we're facilitating. I actually use them I tweak them a little bit and use them in mediations as well. But school districts, when we've been doing this, have said, hey, these are so helpful. They've asked us for copies of these so that they can distribute them to everybody that's involved in IEP meetings. To help them, whether or not they actually are the ones facilitating a meeting. So I will go through these a little bit different order. I like number 2 first. I'll say everyone will have an opportunity to share. Now, we've already said that, remember, to the parent that they're going to have an opportunity to share. We want to hear from them, but just letting them know, once again, they're going to have an opportunity to share. Everyone will. Letting them know that obviously, there are adults that are here in the room that have significant roles that relate to the student's education, and they're important roles, and they might need to be addressed to a certain extent, but we're going to try to keep the focus on the student and their educational needs. In the same way, I go to number 3. There may be some things that have happened in the past that might have an important bearing here that might need to be discussed, and they certainly can. But I say it this way, I want to encourage you, the real promise of a facilitated IEP meeting, and it's really true, I think, of any IEP meeting, is that we really keep our focus on what do we want things to look like moving forward, that we keep our focus on the future instead of being stuck in the past. And then there are 2 more. And I switch the order on these. I'll say, when you do have, I'll do number 5 first. When you do have something to share, I know, and I always try to put this in a positive way, I know there's a way that we can share whatever we need to share in a way that's both honest and respectful. And that's what we're going to try to do. And I'll say the way that I do that, if I have anything difficult to share that might be sensitive to hear, I try to ask myself in the back of my head, how can I say whatever I need to say in a way that makes it easier for others to hear, understand, and respond to me? And I'll just say, if we share that way with others, it really, if you just think about that in your head, it will really make a difference in the way you say what you need to say. And then finally, maybe even more important than anything we have to share would be listening to others. And I've already talked about that, really listening, not to come up with an answer or to build your case, but listening for understanding. It really changes the environment, allows solutions to present themselves. So I think this might be a good time to let them know, especially, again, if you are using these in an IEP meeting, it'd be great to let them see this up front and know that this is what we're going to try to follow. Just one more opportunity for them to be aware of that. Okay, let me go back to this other outline. Okay. Consider sharing those guidelines if you're using them. And then one more, after you've done all of these, make sure you allow time for this to address any questions and concerns the parent might have. This is a great time. Leave a little bit of time to say, do you have any questions about what we're getting ready to do, about the IEP team meeting, about the process. Any questions that I could address at this time? Or are there any concerns that you would like to bring to my attention before we get started? Because they may share something with you there that might be very helpful to you. But again, this is part of not just making a presentation to them and saying thank you. This is part of letting them feel like they've been valued and they've been heard by asking them if they have anything. And if they do, address those issues, questions, and any concerns that they have. Those are the 7 topics that I've listed for your consideration that all relate to expectations that the parties are going to have, whether spoken or unspoken, and with the goal of trying to develop and build shared expectations that we can implement, that we can operate with integrity around. So basically, I'm wondering, I don't know, Allison, if you have any questions, but I'm wondering if anyone has any questions regarding these, if any of these stand out to you. I don't know if there are any parents that are with us in the presentation today, but do you think addressing these kinds of things, having this kind of a discussion as you're coming on board, would that be helpful to parents? But I'm actually, finished with the presentation, but would love to address any questions that might be there or any thoughts that you might have, Allison.
I think, this can happen in a variety of ways. Like it can seem, I'm just thinking through from experience in a school district, it can seem like, okay, well, this is going to take forever if we do this at the beginning of every IEP meeting or whatever. Schools can be creative in how they kind of onboard parents into that special education world at their school district, and just kind of depends on the makeup of your district, what this might look like. Could this be done when a parent has their first eligibility meeting, and you train your school psychs on, hey, when you first meet, at the beginning, or if the school psych's going to call the parent prior and kind of go through some stuff, not make an eligibility decision, but go through some information with the parent. Could they be the person kind of going through those things about what the world of special ed looks like? It just kind of depends on the school's makeup, but I don't think that this has to be thought of as something, oh gosh, this is going to take forever. You know what I mean? And I think that's where, and I get it because I've been there, school people's minds will go is like, oh gosh, we have such a limited time. How are we going to fit this in? It's so important. I think that there's got to be creative ways where things like this can be done because this is huge. Like I said earlier, we hear from parents here that they're intimidated. They didn't know all these things, and then heard it in my last district as to why meetings were scary for them, and because they didn't know what they were walking into. So if we have any, I think if we have any school team people on here that have thoughts or ideas, or parents that have insight into what, if this would be helpful or what this could look like, that would be great. I'm just sort of thinking through that there's got to be, creative ways this can be done depending upon the makeup of the school district.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's not a one size fits all here. Creative ways, but thinking about the importance of these expectations and hopefully developing shared expectations in advance, however that might be done. And that's a really good point you're making. Yeah, I just have a couple slides left. An acrostic that I like to use, TEAM, is together engaging in a mission. And that's what we really want to build on. It's an IEP team, and yet it's so different from any kind of team you could think of, right? Because you meet once a year, maybe a couple times a year, maybe more often than that. You don't have practices, you don't have games, but you have these meetings that are sporadic, and yet there needs to be a sense in which we are together engaging in this mission toward the child's education. And then I love this quote that I use it in different things. It's about collaboration by Henry Ford. Coming together, think about an IEP team. Coming together is a beginning, right? Beginning the journey. Keeping together is progress. Working together, that's success. And that's what we're really after here, and just looking at expectations as an important part of that. Do we have any questions, Allison?
I don't see any on here. We had some earlier that were just comments that were being addressed.
Okay.
No questions right now, but now's the time if anybody's got any.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you should have been able to download the presentation and those communication guidelines from the chat earlier so that you guys have access to them.
And I put my contact information here. I'd love to know if anyone that's either attending today or those that may be watching this webinar later on, what some of your ideas might be in terms of what a creative solution might be, as Allison was mentioning earlier, something to be thinking about. Also, you can always reach out to me. You can reach out to Allison. You can, reach out to the SERC office regarding, we would love to assist you in any way. If you may know that you are inquiring about IEP facilitation. You may know you're inquiring about mediation, but you may not know what you need. You may just know, got a situation here that it's a conflicted situation, or there's a clear dispute, but we need some help. Working together with the school or with the parents. And we would be glad to talk with you, to let you know what the options are, talk with you about your situation, and give you some guidance. Ultimately, you'll be making the decisions, because parents and schools, either one can request a facilitated IEP meeting, either one can request mediation, but both need to agree to use it. But we would love to be part of that process in helping you. I'm trying to see, I don't see any other questions. Sometimes people put them in the chat, but thank you for being with us today. This webinar will be on the site probably next week, but definitely within a week or two. And Allison, we want to mention our next webinar in April. I made a note about that.
Yes, Wednesday, April, I believe it is the 17th. It is. And it's about making adult support determinations from how schools can use data to make determinations for like paraprofessional or extra adult support that students may or may not need. So join us if you can on Wednesday, April 17th at noon.
Right. And you can go to our website, okserc.org. And on the website, there is a page on the left top menu, Wisdom Wednesday webinar page. You can go to that page and see next month's webinar as well as the next few. And there's a registration link you'll click, and that will get you registered for the webinar. We'd love to have you. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and look forward to seeing you next month in Wisdom Wednesday webinar. Thank you.